of course, is talking about our weekly theme. Damon, as Gail, again, thank you for your feedback. Gail, I've been sharing your input with the team here, and inspired, and definitely want to include you on future conversations, because I think you bring a view and a lens that I think has been very. I'm just grateful for your words. So they've been awesome.
Oh, cool. Good. I'm glad you found him helpful.
Yeah. And your book suggestions would be awesome too. Because I'm on a roar right now. So
I just haven't quite gotten there yet, but I have some for you.
All right. Thank you.
In other words, you're hired, Gail.
Yeah. All right. Andrew, nice to see your face. Nice to see you. You doing any recipes?
Hey, yeah, I actually have the shawarma recipe.
Isn't that amazing?
Unreal. So
it's
good.
So good. Yeah, it's all good. It's so good. The longer you let it marinate, the better. And then throw in more of the red onions too, because they taste like candy when you're done. It's so
yes, good. Yeah, I put a whole extra onion in there, and it was fabulous.
That's good. I'm glad you
Thank
took
you
it
so
on.
much.
Yeah. There's a lot more where this came from if you want some more.
Awesome.
So, yeah. Anyway, that's my little back end stuff. I have like my peeps, we're kind of hanging out.
Yeah.
So, anyway. All right. Well, Damon, do you want to kick us off with your magic?
Yeah, busy days, mid-afternoon. So let's just kind of take a couple seconds here and try to get in the present moment. And I want to incorporate a new skill that I just was taught by a neuroscientist. I want you to bring some attention of where your tongue is right now. Notice if it's on the top of your mouth, where is it in your mouth? And also, how about your jaw? See if you can just release and relax your jaw a little bit. Just bring a little awareness to your whole face and allow your face just to kind of relax. Let your eyes just kind of let them go for a second. And from this place, we'll do 30 seconds of breathing, and we're going to do an inhale of 5 and an exhale of 5. We'll do that 3 times. All right, here we go. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Maybe take one big inhale and just kind of a nice sigh exhale. All right. Welcome everybody. So this week's theme has been on growth, and I just wanted to briefly share some of the data that we've collected thus far, our weekly observation around our emotional ID survey. I don't have access to share my computers or my screen, so I'll just tell you. And we're literally, those of you who have been on these calls, that what I've been, looks like I can do it now. It has been, in our 5 months and over 2,000 responses, we've done these programs. Never has the blue pie here lost to the purple pie. So the blue pie is head, identifying what emotions do I feel and where do I identify that? And right now it's a dead heat between the head for Tehama County and the heart, which is pretty awesome. I will say that the shoulders typically kind of go a little bit, you round up. The shoulders are a little bit more of kind of a tension place. And so I typically kind of think about that a little bit more with the head. The chest is obviously a little more connected to the heart. So right now we're almost in a dead heat. And I love that. It shows me just on a kind of a meta level that people have been engaging with themselves with a little bit more of that heart forward identification. And that is, as I said, that's something that we have not seen. Most people, we're typically in the 40% with the head. So I really appreciate that. And just kind of want to shout out to Hema for you kind of acknowledging your emotion, not necessarily interpreting it from the middleman that typically is our thinking mind. And some of the language around which words we're feeling, relaxed, contented, focused. These are still the largest pieces of the pie. Relaxed, contented, and focused. Grateful. These are sort of the largest ones. Tired and stressed, they're significant, but they're not as representative as these are. I also love how 8% is just other. So, we're getting more specific. I'm anxious, I'm drained, I feel tense, I feel hopeful, I'm impatient. This is also a really important thing for us to start to identify with a little more specificity about how we're actually feeling right now, as opposed to just putting a generic label on it. So I just wanted to call that out. And also it could be an indicator that people are doing this survey when they feel a little better. And so, hey, I want to do the survey. So yeah, I feel good right now. I'm focused, I'm relaxed. That's okay. That it's good to identify that. And it's another area that we actually think is really important. And I think it actually segues into this week's theme of growth. Is there's a lot of science around playing from our strengths. How often in life, I used to be a tennis instructor, and I would hit a tennis ball to a client and they'd hit 10. And they would just beautiful 9 in a row. They'd hit the 10th one off the side of their racket and would go into the fence. And we'd come to the net, talk about it. How did it feel for you? Oh, that one I hit into the fence. I'm like, wait a minute, you just were at 90%. And you identified with that one that you wanted to fix. And I think that we live in a fix it mindset often. Carol Dweck called it a fixed mindset. I actually kind of think of it as a fix it mindset, where we're always looking at, if we're parents, if we're coaches, if we're teachers, we're always identifying the thing. And oftentimes we're doing this with good intentions. We're trying to help. I have an 8.5-year-old daughter. She does something that she did wrong. I'm going to go in there and try to help her. Problem with that is that we already kind of live with this negativity bias already. And so if we're training our focus and our attention on the thing we need to fix, really what we're doing is we're giving it a lot of attention. And our brain, by the way, doesn't really know the difference between, it can't distinguish between giving a directive and saying what not to do. So if I say, don't, again, I'll use the tennis example, but, don't, drop your racket before you swing up and through. My brain just heard drop your racket. It didn't hear the don't part. So one of the things that I think, coming back to the survey, and why I think it's a good thing to, hey, I feel good right now, and I'm going to identify with that. I'm going to make a moment and put a marker in there. We have to play from our strengths more than we do in general. And to see genuine growth, rising tide lifts all boats. There's some really good science from a man named Marcus Buckingham around this, where if we identify more with the things that we do well, and Scott and I often give this survey. It's a values and action character strengths survey through positive psychology, and it'll give you your top strengths, like the things that your virtues essentially. And one of mine is perseverance. It's in my top 3. And so whenever I'm in a difficult situation, I tend to remember that, like, oh, but I'm a person that perseveres. And that just sort of sets me up to figure out how to break through. So I think the real areas of discussion tonight are around growth, in my judgment. And Scott, I'd love for you to chime in, and everyone to chime in. But to me, at least, growth comes from a couple places. Number one, it comes from being able to stay consistent even when we are in a plateau. So keeping up the habits, even when we don't see or feel the results. And the way I frame that is trajectory over results. So knowing that if I'm doing the work, if I'm doing the movement, if I'm eating well, if I'm kind of doing all the little stuff, even though I can't really tell anything's changed, that I have to check the box in mentally and even tangibly and say, wow, okay, I accomplished my thing today. So it's making sure to stay consistent through the plateaus, because every so often you get the spike. And we say, let's try to grow 4% more. And I think that where I want to be careful with that is, I think we often say, okay, well, what is it? I want to see the 4%. Actually, the 4% a lot of times is just continuing to do your habits. It's knowing that I'm doing the work, I'm putting in the time, I'm actually doing the right thing, I'm drinking more water, all those things, they compound. So knowing that, and then sort of setting ourselves up to make that spike. And I think a lot of Scott really frames this well at the beginning of our program. We need to struggle more effectively. And so part of that is when we're in plateaus, sometimes we get frustrated and we're like, oh my God, I can't see any progress. Well, the progress is the consistency, and it's reframing it and saying, hey, I'm still doing it. So number one for me in terms of growth is this plateau. Being able to struggle effectively is continue to stay consistent in the plateau zones. And then two is really around recovery. Recovery, that's the other bookend. So if we struggle more effectively, recover more efficiently. Recovery isn't, watching, Anne of Green Gables for 8 hours in a row on Netflix, even though I did that the other night and it was pretty awesome. Recovery is it's definitely sleep, right? But it's also this non-sleep deep rest where we switch off, where we allow ourselves to go into mind wandering mode, where we take care of these practices, where we fuel up with good food and we hydrate, we move our bodies, we connect with our support squad, we get out in nature, and really, the brain grows the new networks when we sleep. So anything we do during the day, and here's a really interesting bit of science, like if we're trying to perform a task and learn something new, and and there's a pulse or a bell or some kind of I'll just say a bell that's ringing while we're performing that task, and then that same sound is played when we're sleeping, we have a much greater capacity to wire in that habit because we've connected it to what we did during the day. So in other words, what you do during the day, if I'm trying to learn how to do something, say juggle, I'm not actually learning it while I'm practicing it. I'm learning it when my body is in deep rest. That's when the neuroplasticity kicks in, and we flush a lot of chemicals while we sleep. So sleep is really gold. So just I kind of want to tee us up to have a conversation around those ideas, right? The bookends of flow we talk about a lot, struggle, recovery, but then this plateau type concept, and then how is recovery going? I want to open it up, and Scott, if you can
I was just going to add a couple things too, because the other part of the equation, especially around a growth strategy, is the mindset that you hold going into it as well. So, and what I mean by that is, people who want to take on a practice, a lot of times when they're trying something new, their mind goes to all the things that could go wrong, and sometimes they ruminate on that. The thing that you need to know about the brain too is it can't distinguish between something you're imagining and something you're experiencing in real time. So you have to be really cognizant of the idea of what is that mindset that you're in. So a couple examples of people who've like wanting to learn piano, but just practiced it in their minds, in terms of just kind of more of a visualization practice. They're actually seeing in their brain the neural circuitry starting to wire as if you're actually doing physical piano lessons. So it's really interesting. And then it's fun because Damon and I both have experience working at the USOPC, and I just remember a guy talking about a guy getting stuck trying to deadlift 500 pounds. You know, he was at 498. He was stuck at 498. He just kept saying, "I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it." And so the trainers basically reorganized the plates to make it look like 498, but it was like 504, right? And so he walks in and he totally doesn't. Like, you just did 504. He's like, nah. And now he's up to like 560 because he got over that threshold. So to Damon's point, it's really that consistency, not just in terms of the practice, but the resiliency to be able to know that you have insight, line of sight, like, oh, that's still my ultimate goal, and I want to feel it. And that's why a lot of athletes, professional athletes, Olympians, when they're I was in Sochi for the Winter Games, and something that was really potent for me, I actually cried during the medal ceremony because it's so potent, because you start to realize in that moment that someone's lifelong dream of getting a gold medal since the age of 7 has been realized. And so they were interviewing the gold medalists. There's actually two women that won the gold medal because they tied, which is amazing. The one woman said, "I've been standing on this podium since I was 7, and here she's like 27. So for 20 years, she gave her life to, this pursuit of a dream. But she had always lived it inside, and she always practiced it and had that story. Now, were there odds of tearing a ligament and breaking, there absolutely was, but she was so focused, and it was really potent. I mean, I as being a witness to that, I was just like, and I had chills, and I still get chills thinking about it. So that's part of the growth scenario as well. It's the consistency and the resiliency, and to be mindful of, like, are you really grounded in that? Is that embodied, where it's like, yeah, this feels like the right thing to do because that's the feeling that I want to get to. So I wanted to add that in there a little bit more, Damon, because I think that's an important distinction. And so I'm curious to know, in your pursuit, where are those areas of growth that you've experienced either over the last 30 days or just in life? I mean, what keeps you going? That perseverance, as Damon said. Or what makes you happy? Maybe that's an easier way to start.
This process for me has been really eye-opening because, I didn't realize like what my flow triggers were, like I can totally go off the deep end when I'm around someone who's not self-aware, right? Like that's my thing that just totally makes me go, but then I take one step back and be like, I, at one point in my, 20s was super unaware of how I represented myself and like how I viewed the world and people around me and things like that. You don't know what you don't know, right? So just being mindful of, I had to go through a lot of crap essentially to be where I am today, is what helps me be around the people who are not self-aware, right? Because maybe they don't know that they're not being self-aware, But this whole process for me has been wonderful because it's like I can pinpoint my triggers now because, I have this set of skills that I've learned through flow.
I'm curious when you said, Andrea, because one of the things we talk about, like the flow channel, right, and the hone your zone kind of concept. When you talk about the challenge skill, if you have a challenge in front of you and you're not really prepared for it, are you feeling like you can maneuver the knobs for yourself to say, I'm in this state, I'm aware I'm agitated, but I also know that I can just breathe, or I can go get a glass of water, or I can go, I'm just curious to know what knobs have you kind of discovered in terms of being able to either regulate up or regulate down so you're at the state you want to be.
Yeah, the breath practice has really helped me a ton. I teach mindfulness to my students a lot, and I try to engage families and parents with mindfulness. So like when I know that I am around someone or something is happening that is triggering me, I know I can go back to my breath work, right? And I have the whole, I do square breathing with kids. I do the figure 8 breathing on their palms. I mean, we do all the different breath work stuff. And sometimes just taking a big inhale and then letting it out, is helpful for me. So that really helps. And then also knowing that when when someone comes in to tell me something that is going on and I'm like, I just don't have any more capacity for this, right? For me, it's like taking a step back and being like, do I just want to be seen, heard, and valued and known? That's what they want too, So I am more cognizant of it than I have ever been in my life, So all good things.
Wow.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I mean, you touched on so many cool things right there. And, that meta awareness of kind of being in the moment, but also kind of being able to be a judge of, or at least be able to say, okay, what I'm looking at the situation, I'm not kind of trapped behind my own eyes, in this ricochet mode. That's really, really potent and powerful, and a really great, testament to mindfulness and just cultivating that awareness. You also touched on something that I think also is an area of growth that sometimes I think is underrated. That you said that I know now that if something happens that I can go to breath, right? And here's the brain loves when it knows the next move. So a lot of times we don't push to the edge because we think if we get to the edge, we don't know what we're going to do, right? And especially if it goes south, then it turns into a 5-alarm fire. But if we can push to the edge and know, if even when I get here, if it gets a little haywire, I can just go to the breath. I've been noticing that a lot about myself. I typically wake up in kind of an anxiety, like my mind starts going right away, and I'm, and then you just kind of, then you just kind of roll with it. And I have, I practice this stuff a lot, and I've now got to this point where I wake up and I just start breathing. And so before my mind can just grab me and kind of pull me where it wants to go, I just start to breathe. And now sometimes I can entertain more anxiety provoking thoughts, knowing that I can always fall back on the breath if I need it. So I think that's a really nice example of, pushing out a little bit and knowing that you've got, it's not a safety net, but it's a way to downregulate, as Scott's saying, and kind of get back into your body. But that's so awesome to hear. I mean, that's just like for us to hear that you've been able to put, these skills and this practice into real world and applicable ways. It's just awesome. It's just awesome. And make shawarmas too. I mean,
That's the money recipe, right?
The last thing that I was going to say that I totally wanted to, I heard something, I've been focusing in a lot on what the Yale Center of Emotional Intelligence is doing. Like Mark Brackett is like my hero,
Mm-hmm.
And so because I tend to judge situations, right? Because that's what leads me into thinking that, my trigger is when people aren't self-aware, right? I'm judging that situation, right? Mm-hmm. So becoming more of an emotional scientist rather than an emotional judge is like my overarching goal, right?
That's a great one.
So it's been cool. It's been really cool because I'm like, oh, that's what that growth mindset stuff that I teach all the time is all about.
Right. Well, I'd also throw out a question just for you to kind of ponder and noodle on, is how much it's also related to your need to feel in control. Like you want to help people and you can't help someone who's not self-aware. And so you get frustrated with yourself. So just be curious and help them bridge that gap, because it's not your job.
Yeah.
You got your own shit to deal with. So
totally.
That's awesome. Good for you. Anyone else? And Andrea, that was such, I mean, again, I love the fact that the thing is you've discovered that on your own. We create space, you step into it. And so thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
What about anyone else? Holly, Gail, Jennifer, Laura? Where's the growth?
So I've been practicing Qigong and for a while lately. I'm like on day 39 right now. I mean, I practiced it in the past, but I'd taken a big break and I'd come back to it. But I'm finding in my shoulders, will get really tired. My shoulders and mid back at times will get really tired doing some of it. And so what I'm finding is that there are just places within movements that you can have a reset or a recovery, which has really been kind of interesting to me. That that you find those places within the more kind of energetic parts of it where you can just have that kind of a reset. Um, Also, just keeping in mind that idea of ease, that you want ease. So that's just kind of, and just loving that concept right now, that in anything you can look for the ease within it.
Mhm.
So those have been a couple of the things that I've been um, keeping in mind lately. Plus, I think I mentioned yesterday or the day before something called a depletion repletion scale. And it's kind of what you're talking about with recovery, but even a little bit more precise in that you start to become aware of different levels of energy. Because sometimes we can get too ambitious about moving ourselves up steps of energy, and then that can actually have the opposite effect, that we weren't quite, especially if you're very depleted, then you want to find out what kinds of things work at that. Like doing qigong might be the perfect thing for me to do at some point, but at other levels it might be, no, I really just need to sleep, or I really just need to, so becoming aware of what things work at what levels, and to get yourself up into the really good levels where you can do just about anything.
Hmm.
So
Hey, Gail, we just had a speaker before this group, and we'll probably send you the video, but he talks about this embodied cognition and interoception. And so those
mhm.
practices that you're doing, is really getting you in tune with your body. And I just love the way you framed it. The other thing that came up for me as you were talking was, I think sometimes growth, in order to really grow, you got to be able to trim the branches, trim things away,
Mhm.
and I'm just curious to know is, as you think about the areas for growth, what are some of the things that are you've trimmed away so you can be, um, allow for that space to go. So, I mean, to me,
Yeah.
there's a pruning. I mean, even in in the brain, you have pruning, and you're pruning the neurons, if you will, and then you
And
can also
mhm.
grow. So I'm just curious to know, have you done some pruning as a result of creating space so you can do the qigong?
Um, Before I go there, what you were saying just reminded me, kids going into about teenage years, that pre-adolescent and teenage years, they lose about half of their brain cells, basically those different kinds of connections, because they're becoming specialists. And what you were saying made me think of that, that even just whether we intentionally do that or not, that's just part of the growth process, because there's this kind of like huge bloom before then, and then it's like, okay, now it's time to now you're going to prune and lose. So I used to tell my freshmen, I go, if you're interested in stuff, do it now, because this is your kind of your some of your important lose it, or use it or lose it. So
Mhm.
time period. But within qigong practice, well, it's always attention. I mean, attention is always, what is it, it's like where your attention goes, your energy goes. So just clearing mind out of away from, in part, anything else extraneous, but there's also kind of a focus you bring to it, not only of your body, but there's um a bit of different kind of awareness, like a visualization you can bring to it too, like like picturing kind of golden energy that is just going through your cells while you're doing it. And some of the different flows are so conducive to that. They are so conducive to that. So I've been
Mm.
focusing more on those kinds. And it's kind of interesting. So I have one set that I'll do that it's very much um, that very much leads to that really being receptive to very good energy. And then I have another set that I didn't realize it, that I've done forever. And I didn't realize it until I started doing it again, that it kind of seals up energy leaks,
Hmm.
which is kind of cool too.
It's amazing.
So much
Thank
good
you.
stuff in there. Yeah, and I think sometimes I think what I caught from that is some of the nuance around growth. Growth is not a ladder, and
Yeah.
it's not a steps. We're not going up these stairs all the time. And to your point, finding the sort of the kinesthetic way to move within a qigong form it's very individual, and I think that's a really beautiful thing. And n equals one, we say it all the time, but that's also growth, right? To be able to maneuver, it's almost like you think about like a current of a river going around boulders. I have a kind of a stuck shoulder, and I do qigong as well,
Mhm.
and there's just these movements when I go up and I go out, and I'm
Mhm.
becoming way more aware of where the blocks are in my body, and how to be gentle within
Right.
creating that relationship between not forcing and kind of grinding through all of that. But to your point as well, from a brain perspective, when we're asking open-ended questions,
Mhm.
so to your point about rest, another generic term, you know, uh, rest and growth. I mean, these are very generic terms, and to be effective, we have to be right where we are and taking the next best step. And really, what that means is asking open-ended questions. What do I need right now? Do I need qigong? Do I need to take a nap? Right? Do I need to take
Mhm.
a walk? Do I need to call my friend? And there's not a prescription to any of this stuff. It has to be very specific. And to Andrea's point, like the emotional scientist, I mean, that's just cool,
Mhm.
It
right?
is. Yeah.
It's super cool. And what does that really mean? It means that you're opening up curiosity. And when that curiosity is open, when we're asking ourselves to explore and take in all the patterns that are going on, how do I feel, what's going on around me, there's a part of our brain called the seeking system, and that just activates it. So now we're really, excited to explore what the moment is, as opposed to the rigidity of, damn it, they're not self-aware, or shoot, I can't do these forms, or I gotta, that's the nuance, right? It's more seaweed in nature than cement. And so, yeah, I really love, I always caution even myself in this week of growth, where it's just like, oh, growth, go, and it's not, it's growth. This is growth. Like what we're talking about, I believe, is really how you establish, a real, kind of a foundational level of growth, and also plunge yourself into the moment, more often than not. So.
Hmm.
Isn't that just kind of an interesting challenge in itself, is just to define what growth is? Like right now, I would tell you it's spaciousness. Growth is spaciousness.
Mhm.
But all the different kinds of definitions that you could come up with growth, that would be, we'll add that to the list.
Yeah,
Define
Well,
sure.
growth.
what's interesting for things to grow, I always like to use like metaphors around gardening and farming. You have to
Mhm.
add, you have to add shit to the soil. You have to, you have a lot of bad stuff. You got to prune things so they're healthier. I mean, there's just a lot of
Mhm.
stuff that we have to get through and get the soils ready, and do stuff that isn't always sexy and pretty and easy. It's hard. And I had an edible landscape many years ago, and I just remember the time that I put into it, but the rewarding nature of it was amazing. And so for me, it was a place for me to go to get into flow, but also to just, as a metaphor, start to realize that, man, it's cyclical. And the plants have such, when you start talking about growth, I was up in Yosemite Valley, up in the highest point, Mount Lyell, and there was an old sequoia tree, probably, I don't know how old, but it was old, and it's been up there for years. And I started having this, I was kind of just thinking and meditating up there, and around it was all this amazing vegetation where, 6 to 8 months out of the year, it's covered in snow, right? Away from light, away from, in the cold. And then for 4 months, maybe 6 months, depending upon the California weather patterns, it is then vibrantly, and there's such a reverence for life, and this urge to want to grow, because that's what it's built, these little seedlings, and so again, I kind of always ground myself into that moment where, what is that reverence for life, or reverence for my friendship, or reverence for my relationship, that I'm willing to invest and maybe do some things. But it's yeah, again, I keep thinking about, what do I need to prune and what do I need to plant? What do I need
there's,
to?
oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and then there's that whole idea too of not, but with going with your metaphor of growing things, but you can then compost what you didn't need to
Exactly.
grow it in, emotions that don't work for you anymore, or ways of thinking, but you can then compost those into growing something, again, cultivate
Yeah.
it back into the soil rather
Yeah.
than just, get rid of it.
Yeah, use it to be of service to you. I mean, because
Yeah.
the other metaphor that I sometimes play with is, how many of us have baggage in our life, right? And so that metaphor of a bag too plays at times, where how many of you packed your luggage with stuff that you never unpacked during your trip, and so we carry the extra weight. And so the question is, how can we repack our bags or put in the compost that stuff that will serve us? Because the brain loves novelty, and so instead of being held hostage to those bad experiences you had growing up, use it as that fertilizer, or that thing that's going to be of service to you. And so again, it's just, I think what I've been really inspired by over the last 30 days is how vulnerable people have been with some of their pain points, and being willing to share what they're pruning or what they're planting. It's been really potent for me, just to kind of take thought into just what the impact of your planting or pruning has done for not only yourself, but for your community. It's pretty inspiring for me.
Yeah, me too. And you thinking about gardening and all that just made me think about the gardening style of permaculture,
Yeah.
where everything is there's an ecology and it all kind of works together. It's kind of a play on words to say, but in positive psychology, there's an acronym, PERMA, and it's through Martin Seligman, and it's positive emotion, engagement, relationships, meaning, and accomplishments. And when I think about that drop down, that list, and thinking about it in terms of culture, what I've noticed through my lens, I've never been to Tehama County before, but what I've noticed is how many more times that when I go through the wall, I'd say a couple of weeks ago, I'd go through the wall and there'd be like 0 likes or 0 high fives, 0 comments. And I literally, will go through the wall now, and that doesn't exist at all anymore. People are connecting to one another. And so I guess it's just at this stage of the program as well, I'm just thinking about zooming out a little and thinking about this concept of permaculture, and really what is it expect more Tehama. Really at the essence of it is, these are my words, but it's to cultivate and develop more understanding for one another, to share more about who we are in small moments. So I think there's a through line between big words like growth and even, emotional words like stress and anger and sad and mad and all this. And we've really tried to curate this experience so that, you're forced to look a little bit deeper for how to describe how you feel, but also to find small little slivers in these mini wins and gratitudes to express these larger concepts. And so I think what I've noticed is that there has been a really a more of a permaculture sense built into the people who have been on this challenge. So I guess I want to turn it back and say, from a more macro, more community-wide perspective, where's the, and I don't even want to say where's the growth so much, but where have you noticed, and how does something like this translate once this platform is over into how to continue to stay more connected as a community?
Well, hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Hey,
Yeah.
Kathy.
Hi,
Hey,
Kathy.
I'm so sorry I came in late. I had to practice my breathing at the courthouse in line for some paperwork. And I was just so eager to get back and not miss this. So I apologize for that.
That sounds like growth, by the way. Being
Yeah,
able
it's a lot of
to-
growth hanging out at the courthouse with a lot of
Yeah.
patience, right? It was fine. It was fine. They've been really nice. It's been a better experience than I thought it would be. And I've been doing it all through this. So that's fine. But, you know, this question of next steps, having not, realized what we were creating sort of in the experience, I have a little anxiety about it ending because I enjoy the positive affirmation in the morning. I end my day by looking at the wall of winds and just wanting to imagine people all over the county doing these. Sometimes they're super simple. My husband made me dinner tonight. My daughter greeted me with a hug. I did something. It's just, it's so simple and not complicated and positive, and sometimes, they're difficult. It's getting through work with a migraine or, whatever it is, but it's very real and it's like real time. It happened today. These people are all over my county. This happened today. And it's like little puzzle pieces, so I know right now I'm going to miss it. I don't always get to do it the way I want to do it, whether it's the body assessment or, sometimes the times of day that I haven't had enough of the day to be able to I don't want to put up my wins yet because I haven't gotten to invest my day. But, and I know probably a lot of other people feel the same way as I do. It's like, gosh, what does that look like? And it's like what I wish Facebook was like, to be honest. It's
Right.
organized. So I know where to look for something. I know where to look for new things that are happening. There's some things that stay static. I appreciate that. It's like how I would like social media to sort of operate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, me too. Me too.
Well, we
The
still have.
stories that we haven't talked about, the stories, I don't know how to capture those, but people are using in different worlds. They're using what they've learned this month to make serious decisions, to really interesting stories. They come back to little conversations like so-and-so said this, she was making a decision to retire, or so-and-so did this, and they were trying to make a decision, a serious decision. And it helped, whether it was a quote or just a bigger awareness. I think we won't ever know all the little seeds that have been planted and all the things that have been happening, but I'm going to go forward knowing that, it helped. Even if it was just a little bit of help here and there, there's some parts of it that really did help.
Mm.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, Kathy, because I'm a huge fan of Valentine's Day. Love Valentine's Day. I used to hate it. Absolutely could not stand all the girls that got roses and whatever, from their people. But on the Wall of Winds today, I don't know if you've noticed this, but I think it's the NCCDI people. They've really got Valentine's Day down over there. But they're sharing all the cutesy little lovely things that their bosses are getting for them and their coworkers, and they're just sharing the love right now. And it's so cute. It's awesome. So Jen, you're rocking it over there.
Yeah, we did like a Candygram thing to raise money for the end of the year celebration for our staff. So we bought we have a spirit squad. So it's a bunch of teachers who get together, and there are party planner people. And so they put all these little packages together. So you could buy these packages and have them delivered to your staff.
Aww.
Yeah. And if you're really special, you get one where Brian, our executive director, gets to sing to you. So that's tomorrow.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's that keeps people going in times that we're living in right now, right? I know for me, my love language, my top one is gifts. So it doesn't matter if it's from the dollar store or Nordstrom, just being thought of is really what makes a difference for people who have that as their love language, so you guys are doing it right over there.
We're having a
We
good
have
time.
a fund that you are asked when you come to work there if you want to contribute, and it's only like $2 a paycheck or something like that. But everybody contributes, and it's called Sunburst. And then we use that for an anniversary gift card, or for sending flowers to somebody for something special, celebrations, or sometimes it's sad stuff. If they lose a family member or something happens, or sometimes we just need Starbucks. Darn it, and we can say, hey, Sunburst can do that. Let's go on a Starbucks run. But it does make it nice.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, the Valentine's is a great example that these little things are contagious. We have such a negative connotation to contagion right now with the virus, but this is a positive virus and it spreads very quickly. And I think there's this sense of overwhelm often, like, well, what can little old me do to make any difference? And I really do feel like programs like this, especially when people are committed to sharing a little bit, right? It just spreads. It becomes this thing. And, Jennifer's idea about the Valentines all of a sudden affected you, Andrea. And you start lighting up each other. And that just starts to spread. And to me, Scott and I, we're committed to this program. We want to have, millions and millions of these action steps, because this truly is planting the seed, as you said, Kathy. And that once that seed gets planted, now to water it. But I think so often, in the past 6 months for sure, and even, in the hustle bustle life of, consumerism, and we got to go, we forget about these little things. And I think too often we thought, what real growth is external, and real success is material. And I think that, sharing these small things with one another, it really does bond and connect us. I feel connected to all of you, and I'm going to miss it too. I really am. Before you came on, Kathy, Andrea coined the phrase emotional scientist. And I just think it really speaks to our ability to run these experiments and to share these little things. And when we're overwhelmed, we have to change the game. And so what we did, we all just changed the game and said, okay, well, I can do a mini win. I can say that I, made my husband dinner or whatever, right? But those things just start to add up. And those little drips end up making a big old bucket of water after 30 days. And I guess my hope is that all of you will just somehow continue to stay connected in small little ways that, and who knows, maybe we'll wrangle up another one of these platforms at some point and do it again.
I do want to say though that a couple of things here. One is, next Thursday we're going to be doing kind of the celebratory kind of an experience, and we're going to go through and we have some things to raffle up, and Kate is going to be raffling some stuff up from her store. So all those points you've been getting are going to go somewhere. We're going to be donating some of the books that we have around flow. So it's not over, and there's always a next step. It's never see you later. It's it's never goodbye. It's see you later. But I also wanted to highlight, as you were talking, the intentionality that this community, and again, it's a group of well over 100 people that have been a part of this journey, and the level of awareness. And Kathy, what you said about the impact. It's interesting when they have at Chico State or anywhere around the country where these monks come in and build a mandala, with the different sand mandalas and stuff. And there's a lot of people that come in and see it, and it's all about mindfulness. And what they find in those communities, that crime rates go down. And it's really a phenomenon that but because there's such a narrative and a story that people are being mindful and compassionate. And I think there's something there that it would be really interesting to see, Kathy, what were the crime statistics over the last 30 days? And did we have an impact? It would be a stretch, but I do believe that if we are intentional with one another, and I keep thinking we got to have, instead of random acts of kindness, we need to be intentionally acting kind, not only for ourselves, but for others. And I think there's a reason from a just a sheer biological perspective, I want to share something with you, unless anyone else has to share something. I've been reading a book a week, and I read one was the telomere effect, and I shared this with Damon because the telomeres, if you're not familiar with, they're like what are they on the ends of your chromosomes, and when you're dealing with a lot of stress and chronic stress, they weaken and lead to premature aging and early disease. And so at the very end of the book, they have what's called the Telomere Manifesto. And I just want to share with you some of the key things that they talk about. So it says, your cellular health is reflected in the well-being of your mind, body, and community, which you guys have been about. And it says, here are the elements of telomere maintenance that we believe to be the most crucial for a healthier world. So the first one is about minding your telomeres. And the first, it says here is a stack of recommendations. One is evaluate sources of persistent, intense stress. And then notice, what can you change? 2, transform a threat to a challenge appraisal. So think about how many guys reappraised things over the last 30 days. Become more self-compassionate and compassionate towards others. Think about how much that unfolded on the wall and did gratitudes. Take up a restorative activity, Andrea, breath and shawarma, right? Just kidding. Next one is practice thought awareness and mindful attention, because awareness opens the doors to well-being. So that's just the benefit for yourself. The second one is maintaining. Be active, move your body. Develop a sleep ritual for more restorative and longer sleep. Eat mindfully to reduce overeating and ride out cravings. Choose telomere healthy foods, such as, basically non-inflammatory, whole foods, omega-3, skip the bacon, which I'm not willing to do quite yet. I like bacon. I'm a baconarian, right? Connect telomeres. Make room for connection. Disconnect from screens for part of the day. Cultivate a few good, close relationships. And this is what I love, because many of you guys are working with children. Provide children quality attention and the right amount of good stress. Cultivate your neighborhood social capital, which means helping strangers. Seek green, spend time out in nature. And then the last one under this one, it says, mindful attention to other people allows connections to bloom. Attention is your gift to give. So I just wanted to share those. And then the last one is create telomere health in your community and the world, because they're finding that, mothers who are stressed out in a chronic stress environment and in communities that are maybe, really kind of struggling, it impacts the child's telomeres in utero. And so it's a term of epigenetics. And so I'm just becoming more and more convinced that we have a broader mission to co-create together. So it's create telomeres for health in your community or in the world, improve prenatal care, protect children from violence and other trauma that damage telomeres, reduce inequality, clean up local and global toxins, and improve food policy so that everyone has access to fresh, healthy, affordable food. And then she says, the future health of our society is being shaped right now, and we can measure part of that future in telomere base pairs. So there's really some interesting science. So it's not just about the flow state, it's biological. I mean, and it's cellular that we can get tuned into. So there's a lot of science that's going into the work that we're doing, but you guys, as Damon said, you guys have been scientists and have been experimenting all month, but the experiment never ends, which makes it even more inspiring. So, Kathy, this isn't the end. This is maybe just the beginning. Nope. Yeah.
No, we're hoping that if nothing else, we're able to, maybe make this something that Tehama County always does, all of January, February kind of thing, or maybe even twice a year. So we'll try to figure that out. And for anybody who didn't get to, that was our workshop basically for January, and it led to February, which was yesterday. I don't know if anybody on here was able to be part of that one. I think they really married each other nicely, and even some of what you're talking about right now, Scott, came up because it was all about equity and neighborhoods, and what happens when you have a healthy neighborhood, and we're lifting these kids up, and I just love the connection. And then the next one we're doing will be around social emotional learning and mitigating learning loss. And again, it comes back to the ACEs in our community, the levels that we fight here, and going back to that prevention piece and what you can do now to heal from that with better choices. So powerful. It's just so powerful. And they're just so nicely layering on top of each other, and I'm excited for that. And I think one thing that people keep saying too is, of all the times right now, like this, when you feel like something happened just for you, Like, I don't know about how everybody else feels, but for me, there were things going on in my life in this time period, big choices I needed to make. And then some of these, the quotes would come back about making a decision not based in fear, but in hope. I'm like, whoa, are you reading my email? What's going on here? But lots of people had that same feeling, like this came along at a time that they were needing a little extra support in some of those areas. So it's been, it's really interesting how that works.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'll leave you with a quick scientific experiment as well. And it was done at Stanford, where they were manipulating the brains of rats, and they were getting them into either like fight flight mode, and they were giving them a reward for being a little bit more like bring it on, and then they were able to kind of put them back into kind of a normal state. Don't ask me how, but what they found was that the rats actually preferred the challenge. And they know this because they have this, like, they kind of rattle their tail, and it's kind of their way of saying, bring it on, let's go, bring it on. And I say all that to say that it's not necessarily that stress is bad. It's our relationship with it. And we need some element of stress in our lives to be alive. And I think what I loved about this month, and really kind of, these concepts that we're talking about tonight, is bring it on, and we can handle more capacity, especially when we take care of ourselves and we go to the courthouse and we breathe, or we breathe while we're in the midst of a situation that typically triggers us. Or we're kind of getting ourselves stuck or floundering. When we're choosing to, shift our state on the fly, we're then able to keep that mindset and that attitude of, all right, bring it on. I can handle more, and I can take on a little bit more, and I can help out a little bit more. And there's a real beautiful ripple effect to us being able to build our capacity, and really at the end of the day set ourselves into what's it's a more natural way, which is to push a little bit harder, to really bring it, to say a little bit more of that bring it on kind of attitude. And right now our world really does need us to be that type of person. And I think that this has been a small snapshot of how that plays out in real time, in real action. And I love that you're able to back it up with some community development projects that are really, now as you all have built your own capacities, you can roll your sleeves up even more and see if you can make even more change. So it's been an amazing month, and as Scott said, it's not over yet, and there will be no goodbyes.
Yeah. Well, and again, Kathy, we can curate ones specifically for Tehama County. Do just a service challenge, but we also have 2 others in the can, and we're going to do whatever we can to support you guys, because our goal is to get this around the country. And to Damon's point, we'd love to see 100 million actions of self-care and shared care out there. So I think you guys are a catalyst for us to seeing what's possible. We've been doing it open courses, but this is for a community. And I don't know about you, but I've been grateful, Kathy, for that call and getting this thing happening. So you guys did great.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so grateful for you.
That's been awesome. It really has. And I have a high schooler. I was listening in on a distance learning morning with her, and the teacher's fantastic. And I'd hoped we'd have a couple more teachers that might, bring on their high schoolers. But we did have the teachers. And I think now we've got some more ambassadors that within the school, setting can say, hey, this is a pretty cool thing. Let's try it with some of our, 10th and 11th graders or whatever it happens to be. But my heart was breaking the day I was listening, because these kids were so vulnerable with this teacher. They had just come off a break, and they were supposed to create a meme that shared how their break had been. And kids love memes, and but these were not funny memes for the most part. They were heartbreaking memes, and like the Titanic going down, and just really raw. And they just were wanting it to be over, and get back to school. And that was their safe place. It was just one after another. I was like, oh my gosh, these kids need this. They need positivity. They need each other, helping each other. And, I'm grateful they feel safe, but I think there's so much more that can be done with these kids who they're just struggling, so I would love to see more of these tools used in, the class setting, small groups, however that plays out, but so many uses.
So what's the next best step for us, guys? That's our opportunity for growth right here. So, but anything else, Carolyn or Crystal or Jennifer? I just want to make sure there's a little space. Anything you wanted to add or share?
This is Crystal. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Sorry, I've had really bad technical difficulties, and I haven't been able to make any of the other Zooms, so I'm glad I was able to get on. I just wanted to say thank you so much. I have grown tremendously. I mean, leaps and bounds. And again, we've talked about growth and how that looks. But just the awareness of my emotions tenfold. I mean, I have never, and for me, we talk about ACEs, I would score an 8 on that. Wow. So I have an extreme trauma from childhood and on. And so it's been really hard to just learn what my emotions even are. What do I feel right now? And I'm coming up on 39 years old and have 2 young children. And so it's really been a big, oh man, I know I'm growing every day, and it's just being a better mother, just being more aware of what I'm feeling. And then the big piece for me is now when I acknowledge it. I've never acknowledged what I felt. So now that I'm doing that, it has helped just in my family dynamics, being able to take a moment and say, why am I feeling this at this moment? And then actually saying it out loud. And I've always had to kind of keep all of those emotions in for a lot of years. So I've grown so much, and I really felt like this really just helped so much. And it's something that I'm going to continue, obviously, even like you said, though, you guys aren't leaving forever, but I kind of understand what Kathy's saying. It's a little nerve-wracking because it's really just helped so much for me. So I really appreciate your guys' work, and it's been amazing.
Wow. Thank you for saying all that, Crystal. And it's just amazing. And I've followed you a bit on the wall as well. And it's just been really nice for you I love hearing your insights and just your experience. I will say too, Kathy, that I'm happy to leave the sort of that link for the emotional ID. Maybe that's something that we could sort of just keep alive somehow for people to be able to tune back into, if that's a habit, and if that's something that people feel like that has become a place that they can continue to cultivate that awareness. That's easy enough just to kind of keep that link alive. If people are interested in that, that's totally fine with me. But thank you so much for saying all that, Crystal.
Yeah, thanks,
What it's all
Crystal.
about. Yeah.
Whew.
Yeah, I'm not. My feet aren't even on the ground. I have a stand-up desk, and my feet aren't touching the ground now. So thank you for that, Crystal. That was,
You're levitating.
just your vulnerability and again, it's you've proven the theory that the growth came from you, and you had the courage to lean in, and I'm grateful for your courage, and you're gonna, I don't know, I'm inspired. So thank you.
Yeah, me too.
All right, Carolyn or anyone else? Again, we'll have another chance to come back together next Thursday for the celebration. We're going to go through all the data points and show the people who gave high fives and really have some fun and really capture. So hopefully we can encourage more of your colleagues to be there. We'll get the link up on the wall. And but again, just so grateful. I'm like I said, inspired by this work and committed to bringing it to the masses. And I think we can do it together as a community. So let's keep building it. That's our opportunity for growth. But I don't know what more to say other than I'm so freaking grateful right now. So.
Me too.
Yeah. So thank you guys, Gail, Carolyn, Holly, Crystal, Kathy, Jennifer, Andrea, who left. She's probably going to make shawarma. So anyway,
Thank you.
thank you guys.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Everybody have a great
Bye.
weekend.
You
Have a
too.
great weekend.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Yeah.